and welcome to, oops, sorry about that. Welcome to the next video. We left off on the Good Samaritan, right? And um, the Good Samaritan and the Gentiles are dogs, right? So now we're going to continue with really Christ versus the Jewish rabbis, right? And we're going to go into Jesus heals the blind man, John 9, and then we're also going to do John 5, the healing at Bethesda with the man with the mat. Okay, so yeah, we talked about the Gentiles are dogs and how this had nothing to do with Christ actually calling the Gentiles dogs. This had to do with Christ fighting Judaism, right? So Christ is a fighter of Moses and the prophets, right, to fulfill their job. And then we're just showing you that Judaism is the enemy of the Old Testament, right? And Christ came to fulfill the law of Moses, in turn abolishing it, like putting it to an end. There's no more sacrifices, there's no more temple, and that the laws of Judaism, the Jews today, is an invented religion. It has nothing to do with Moses or the Old Testament, right? So it's really Christ versus the Jewish rabbis, and that these guys are just total imposters. It's a complete man-made religion, and that Christ's entire ministry, his entire ministry, is fighting Judaism. So when people are trying to say that, oh, Christ, Yeshua, Rabbi Yeshua, it's like Christ was never a rabbi. A rabbi is a specific term to it's a teacher of Talmudic, what would become Talmudic law, but the oral law, the laws of the elders, traditions of the elders, Jewish traditions that are not found anywhere in the prophets or the Torah or taught by Moses or anyone, right? So in this video we're gonna go over oral traditions that are being broken, and we're gonna be talking about healing on the Sabbath. There's no law in Moses that says you can't heal on the Sabbath. Carrying objects, not in the Old Testament. Okay, there's no prohibition, nothing banning you from carrying objects unless you're making money, unless you're engaging in commerce, you're doing business. That's breaking the law. Mixing solids and liquids, right? Kneading. So this is going to be very important because Christ is actually, it's really funny what Jesus is actually doing in this story. And he's got a lot of, guts, a lot of like bravery for what he's doing to these Jews, right? So again, we're just going to quote Matthew 15. This is what we're dealing with here. Washing of hands. Why do the Jews come up to Christ and his disciples and they're like, why do your disciples transgress the traditions of the elders? The traditions of the elders is the oral law that will eventually be codified and turned into the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, the Gemara, right? And then you're going to get Maimonides, you're going to get the Shulchan Aruch, you're going to get all these different rabbinical sources and authorities and teachings to the point where like nothing these Jews are doing today is what the Old Testament or Moses or anyone said. And that's why they hate Christ so much. That's why they hate Christianity so much. Okay, so this is the traditions of the elders. This would become the Talmud later on. For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. But he answered and said unto them, why do you also transgress the commandments of God by your tradition? Okay, and then later in Matthew, in verse 6, that he says, thus have you made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. Okay, that their traditions are in opposition to Moses and the God of the Bible. And yet Jesus, Yeshua, is a rabbi, and yet the whole New Testament is literally Christ fighting Jewish rabbis. And our opponents today are trying to tell us, oh, Christ was a rabbi. You worship a Jewish rabbi. No, I worship a man who stood up to the Jewish rabbis. I worshiped a man who didn't tolerate the Jewish rabbis. I worship a man and believe in a man and follow a man who stood up against Judaism. Why don't you? Right? I've got all these pagans attacking me for following Christ, who literally fought against Judaism, fought against the Talmud, fought against Jewish bankers. And I'm the enemy, right? They're trying to destroy the guy who fought against the religious Jews. right? Christ is the problem. Rabbi Yeshua, the guy who fought and destroyed the rabbis, right? Okay. Okay, so in the Jewish traditions, in the rabbinical Judaism, this is actually from the Shulchan Aruch. This is not the Talmud, but it's up there. Okay, like why do Jews dress a certain way? Why do Jews wear yarmulkes? The Talmud doesn't really codify and legalize the yarmulke. I mean, there's head coverings mentioned and stuff, but there's no like law that says what. It's the Shulchan Aruch where you're gonna get why do Jews dress the way they dress. So this is a very authoritative book, and in the Shulchan Aruch it'll tell you that one who has a mere discomfort with no danger at all, it is forbidden to perform any healing for him on the Sabbath. Then we're going to come to Maimonides. Sorry, I don't know why I have Rambam here. It should be, it's Maimonides, okay? Maimonides says, it is forbidden to perform any healing on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, even if it involves no prohibited labor. That's actually a very important part, that last part, even if it involves no prohibited labor. Should we talk about it now? This is going to come up later when we go over the kneading, when Jesus mixes his spit with earth. Prohibited labor there are 39 listed prohibited labors that you absolutely cannot do on the Sabbath. And some of that stuff is going to be like, say you need to make a medicine. Say you have someone who's sick and they need something for the pain, they need something for an infection, and it involves you going, like you don't have it. You have the plant, but you need to actually take that plant and put it in a mortar and pestle and start like crushing it down. And then you need to mix it and make a paste, let's say. You have to turn that plant into something. You can't do that. That's a prohibited labor. That on the Sabbath, you can't take that plant, crush it, turn it into a paste, and apply that. So Maimonides goes as far as to say it is forbidden to do any healing on the Sabbath, okay? Nothing. So healing is banned on the Sabbath. So this is going to play a big, role. But the Jews are hypocrites. I knew a guy who was in Israel, and when he was walking down the street, I've never been to Israel. This guy was in Israel, and he got kind of jumped by a bunch of Orthodox Jews, and they dragged him through an alley, made him go up an apartment, up a set of stairs. He had no idea what was going on. And then when he walked into the room, there was an old man in a bed. And for some reason, they needed him just to turn off a light. So this guy walked 10 minutes. They thought, we found a goy, we need this guy, turn off this light. Because they're that crazy that they think that a light switch, that when Moses said no work, no labor, it's electricity turning a light switch. That's what Moses meant, right? Unbelievable. So anyways, you can't do anything. The old guy was sick, right, in bed, and he couldn't. No Jew could turn off the light to help him sleep. Anyways, so healing is completely off limits. Carrying objects. So this is going to come into play later when we're going to talk about the guy with the mat. So in Mishnah Shabbat 1, I'm going to go through a couple of these. Carrying out between domains. Guys, this is going to be some of the most insane stuff you've ever read in your life, okay? So on the Sabbath, you can't carry anything, really, especially from one spot to another spot. If I want to bring this cup is going to be bound to a 4-cubit space. I'm not going to be allowed to move this cup from maybe a 2 by 2 meter square. I can go over a little bit. We're going to talk about that. But I can't bring this cup. Say my neighbor wants tea, and I got to go through my apartment next door. I can't do that. If I want to bring this cup upstairs and give some, I can't do that, okay? I don't even think I could have tea unless it was made the day before. So you can't carry stuff from building to building, from place to place. You're bound to this. We're going to see here, okay? So the act of carrying out from a public domain into a private domain, or vice versa, which which are prohibited on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, are primarily two basic actions that comprise four cases from the perspective of a person inside a private domain, and two basic actions that comprise four cases from the perspective of a person outside in a public domain. Okay, pretty much, guys, you can't move stuff from point A to point B, okay, on the Sabbath. Now, it is permissible for a person to move objects in the public domain. Guys, I have to explain this to you. So without knowing this, you can't know the New Testament. You can't understand what Jesus was actually doing when he was, when we get to the story with the guy with the mat. You need to understand, and they could kill you, in a sense, for breaking the law. Okay? At that time, they couldn't under Roman rule, but you'd get lashes, you'd go to prison, you'd pay fines. They'd destroy your life for breaking something as ridiculous as this. And none of this stuff is in the Torah. Moses never talked about this stuff. So it is permissible for a person to move objects in the public domain within a square of 4 cubits. So a cubit's about 1.5 feet. Okay, so it's 45 centimeters? Is that what it is? Roughly 45 centimeters, maybe. So 4 cubits by 4 cubits. So it's 2 by 2 meters, let's say, adjacent to the place where he is standing. He is allowed to move articles freely throughout this entire square. Now, these cubits are measured according to the size of the arm of an average person. So get this. If, however, the arms are dwarf-sized, he is granted 4 cubits according to the measurement of an average person's arm. So don't worry, guys. They got even dwarves are covered. That the dwarfs are not bound by a dwarf cubit. They are bound by a normal man's cubit. I'm laughing at how ridiculous and how deep they've thought of this. A lot of time went into making this law. Now, there are some loopholes, and the loophole is you can actually go past 4 cubits because the diagonals are longer, right? It's from point A to point. So the diagonal is going to be a little bit longer. And so you can go even a little bit past 4 cubits, but not a lot, just a couple extra, maybe centimeters, to match the distance of the angle, of the corner to corner. But if you go anywhere past that, now you're liable. So it's forbidden for you to go past the 4 cubits, but it's okay if you go a little bit because of the diagonals. It's this insane. So anyways, I think you guys get the point. This is not in the Torah. Moses never talked. If Moses read this, Moses would think you are crazy. You are insane. This is not what Moses meant. And so this is going to be important later in our story. So mixing liquids and solids, Torah versus traditions. So if we go to, again, Babylonian Talmud, the other one was also in the Talmud. Shabbat 18, one who mixes flour, ashes, and ink. I'm just paraphrasing this. You guys can go read the whole thing if you want. One who mixes flour, ashes, ink with liquid is performing kneading, lash or losh. He who kneads with dust is liable. You're guilty, okay, for a Sabbath. That's pretty much what it's saying. Now, I'm paraphrasing this. This is not a direct quote from Shabbat 18a. Go and read it yourself, and they're going to just mention things like flour and ink. Well, what if we mix this, and what if we do that? It's just, honestly, guys, I don't know how anyone could actually be a rabbi and take this stuff seriously. I really don't. So kneading. So what this is, okay, melaka of lash or losh, these are pretty much what this means is the principal labors is what this would, I guess, translate into. So these are the principal labors that are forbidden. I think there's 39 of them. And they encompass all activities which, like kneading, join small particles into one mass using liquid, and this applies to both food and non-foods. Okay, it is also later a treatment of dough, like basting and braiding. This is from Chabad.org. Okay, so we've got Just so we can, so because like when you read the Shabbat 18, the Talmud's not going to mention certain things like earth or um, um, I don't know, cement or something like that. They just mention flour, ashes, and ink. But the point is, it extends to any particles, anything at all. Okay, so here we've got Maimonides. So now we're later in time. On obviously Maimonides is moving more towards um, medieval times. So Maimonides says one who needs is liable. So and kneading just means really like when you knead dough, when you mix dough, flour, and water together, you're making this paste. You're making this dough. You're making something. You're mixing a liquid and a solid together. So liability does not apply until one needs a substance whose normal manner is to be kneaded, such as flour and similar materials. So it's also similar materials. However, one who places water upon dust and does not knead it is exempt until he needs it. So I guess you could spit on the ground, but if you were to now walk on it or touch it with your finger, now you're guilty, right? Does that make sense? So one who places water upon dust and makes it into clay, or who places water upon bran or bean husks and kneads them, is liable on account of kneading. So now we understand that it is against the law in Judaism, we can't, anyone who wants to fight me and argue with me on this topic, please go to Moses. If there's any pagans watching or anyone who wants, please go to the Torah and show me this law from Moses. Show me where Moses says you can't mix this and that, you can't do, and you're not going to find it. Okay? Very important that we know this stuff, because now when we come to Jesus heals the blind man, all right? In this story, I mean, I remember reading it for the first time. And you're going to read stories in the New Testament where a Roman centurion or a legionnaire a soldier comes up to Christ, or the Canaanite woman that we just spoke about in the last video. They just came up to Jesus, asked Jesus, hey, can you heal my servant? Hey, can you heal my daughter? Jesus, without doing anything, heals them. But in this story, Jesus decides he's going to spit in the ground, mix his spit with the earth, make a paste, rub that paste on the guy's eyes, and then he's going to tell this guy, hey, I want you to go show the Pharisees, go show the Jews what we just did. Okay. Jesus is like the ultimate like troll of the Jews. He is purposely, and he even says he's purposely doing this. Let's go through the story. Okay, so mixing liquids and solids. We're in John 9. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin? Okay, this is actually really important. This man or his parents, that he was born blind? And a lot of people, I noticed this with Jews, I noticed this with Hindus, I noticed this with Muslims. A lot of people equate bad luck with you must have done something wrong. Now, when you read the book of Job, that's not what's happening. Job didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't an evil guy. Here's an example of a good guy. His sin had nothing to do with his misfortune. It was just God proving a point. God using this guy. You can be a really good guy and just everything wrong happens to you. In fact, in our world, that is often the case. No good deed goes unpunished. Right? So don't think, this is a good question, because a lot of religions, like karma is a rather evil concept in some branches of Hinduism, because it prevents people who are in a position to help someone. Oh, I'm not going to help this person. He must have done something in his previous life, and that's why he's in this bad situation now. And he needs to learn his lesson. And me, I'm blessed. I've got 5 Bugattis, and I've got all this money, and I've got everything, And I must have done something really good in my last life, and that's why I'm so blessed in this life. And well, that guy sucks because he needs to punish. He needs to suffer. Maybe the guy didn't do anything wrong. Maybe I don't believe in multiple lives, right? But my point is, a lot of people think like that. That, oh, this guy's got all these problems because he deserves them. And that, in my experience in the world, is a lot. Yeah, some people are like that, but other people, if anything, they're suffering because they did the right thing. Now, anyways, obviously, now a lot of people will blame demons and monsters for this. No, if we go to Exodus chapter 4, verse 11, what does God say? He creates the blind. He created the diseased people. He created the sick. God's like, I did this. This is for me. I made this guy blind. I did this. And Christ is now backing this up. Why is this guy blind? Jesus answered, neither has this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. Now listen to Jesus here. Now the translation kind of butchers it a bit, but you'll get it. I must work the works of him that sent me, God, while it is day. The night is coming, right? When no man can work, okay? As long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. When he did speak this, he then spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle. Okay, so it's very important that Jesus is like, hey, I need to do this now because night is coming, okay? And he needs to do it now when no man can work. The Greek, if it's kind of in a weird order. I don't know why the translators translated it this way. But if you notice, he's saying, I have to do this now. Why? Because it is the Sabbath. And if night comes, because at nighttime, Jews work off of a lunar calendar. When the evening comes, it's the day's now shifted. You can now work and do whatever you want. But on this day, you can't do what Jesus is doing. Now remember, in the last stories, Jesus just healed people. He didn't have to do any weird voodoo ritual, but here he's going to do some weird ritual. He's like, hey, I have to do this now because night's coming. This is the only time I could do this because now is the time when people can't work. So night's coming, and I need to do this when no one can work. And so now he's going to, what did we just learn? Mixing liquids and solids is forbidden, not in Moses. Christ isn't breaking the law. Christ came to fulfill the law. It's the Jews who are breaking the law. So then he spits and mixes this thing, right, which violates oral tradition, Talmudic law, Judaism, not Moses, Judaism. And then he anoints the guy's eyes, and then he says to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way, therefore, and washed, and then he came to see. So now the guy can see. The neighbors, therefore, and they which before had seen him, that he was blind, they're like, is this not the guy that would beg? Like, it's very important that the guy that they chose is a guy that everyone knows is blind. Okay? And therefore said they unto him, how were your eyes open? So now everyone's in shock. And the guy's like, well, this guy Jesus, he put clay on my eyes, anointed my eyes, and said to me, go to this pool in Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received my sight. So, like, very specific. Well, Jesus told me to break the Sabbath. This guy broke the Sabbath. We both broke the Sabbath. Not only is he healing on the Sabbath, but the guy mixed solids and liquids together and put them on my eyes, breaking the Talmud, well, the oral traditions, okay? And this is to gaslight the Jews, right? Then said they unto him, where is he? He said, I don't know. And they brought to the Pharisees this guy, and it was the Sabbath. That's very important, that it was the Sabbath when Jesus made the clay. You might read that and just go, well, why is this important? Why does it have to very specifically say, and it was the Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes? Because the writers of the New Testament are trying to explain to you he's breaking oral law. He's breaking Judaism. Not Moses, he's breaking Judaism. Jesus fulfilled Moses. He said unto them, he put clay upon my eyes, and I washed, and then I could see. And so now the Pharisees are like, this man is not of God, because he keeps not the Sabbath. Okay, do you see where this is going? Where did he break the Sabbath? Guys, you have the whole Old Testament to go through. And keep in mind that only the Pharisees and the priests really, and maybe some guys in Egypt, have Torah scrolls and know the actual law. It's kind of like the Renaissance. Um, during the Renaissance, guys, no one can read and write. It's like 10% of the world can read and write. You have to rely on your priests and your teachers that they're actually telling you what the Torah says. Do you think these Jewish Pharisees, these Jews, are actually teaching people what the Torah says? During the Renaissance, you were burned alive as a Christian. If you dared to read the Bible in your own language, they killed you. Think about that. That was Europe, right? Jews are trying to take over the world with the Bible, but they're killing you for reading it. It's kind of like the same thing here. These guys have no idea that these laws that are being forced on them have nothing to do with Moses or the Bible. It's no different than what the Catholic Church was doing during the Renaissance period, during the time of the Medicis and the Jewish bankers running the Europe at this time. So that's what's going on here. So understand that these guys have no way to even check if this is true or not. They would have to go to a synagogue and wait for that port. Anyways, it wouldn't be as easy as today as us just picking up a Bible and going, oh, well, that's not in there. So this man is not of God because they're not like, wow, the guy healed a guy. This guy must be from God. It's like, well, he broke the Sabbath. He can't be from God. It's not in the Torah. Okay. So now Jesus is actually causing division. This is a big problem because now people are saying Jesus is a prophet. He must be from God or else he couldn't have done this miracle. And it's going back and forth. And now they're going to drag the guy's family. And this is where it gets scary. Because now the guy's family is being dragged into this, his parents, and they're terrified. Because you don't want to be cast out of the community. You don't want to be cast out of the synagogue. And now they're being dragged before the Pharisees, the Jews. They're like, okay, is this your son? Was he born blind? And they're like, yeah, his parents answered and said, yeah, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But by what means he now sees? We don't know, right? So they don't know why. And who has opened his eyes? We know not. But he is of age. Notice this, the parents are terrified. They're like, look, don't ask us, ask him, he is of age. Okay? He shall speak for himself. The parents do not want to get involved on this because this, could be a capital crime if they want to bring it to the Romans and ask the Romans to kill him. Okay? These words he spake to his parents because they feared the Jews. Okay? They feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogues. So here's Jesus, performs a miracle. They're accusing him of breaking the Sabbath, which they can't pull out the Torah and prove that. They can't do that. And the guy's parents are so terrified. They don't even want to speak for their son because this could be a capital crime for something they just invented out of. This is Judaism, not the Old Testament. This is Judaism. All right. So what really is happening in John 9? Now it was the Sabbath when Jesus made the mud. He put the mud on my eyes, is what the guy said. And then this man is not from God. He does not keep the Sabbath. Not what happened. Okay? They are not quoting Moses. They are quoting oral law, the traditions of the elders. Okay? So Jesus makes mud with his spit. He heals the blind man on the Sabbath. The Pharisees say he does not keep the Sabbath. Okay? This is not only about healing. This is about rabbinical halakha, okay, rabbinical law, versus divine compassion. No, these Jews do not care that a man was healed, that Jesus performed a miracle. They are concerned about the oral law. Their man-made invented law was breached, okay? So, why Jesus chose this method? A deliberate symbolic act. This is like he's the ultimate troll of the Jews. Okay, so Jesus could have healed him with a word. He intentionally breaks a rabbinical fence law. He exposes the difference between God's law versus man-made tradition. Okay, he forces the Pharisees to show their hearts. We prefer legal categories over a man receiving sight. Okay, that's what matters to these people. That's Judaism. Okay, full well you reject the commandment of God that you may keep your own tradition. Okay. All right. The Pharisees' reaction when tradition replaces mercy. Instead of celebrating the miracle, they interrogate the healed man. They attack Jesus. They condemn compassion. The rabbis cannot rejoice when mercy violates their interpretation. Okay? Thus have you made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. All right? So that's what was happening in the story with the spit. I'm sure a lot of people have read that story and went, what is Jesus doing? How creepy is this? What kind of sorcery or voodoo or witchcraft is Christ doing? It had nothing to do with that. Christ, in all the other stories, just healed people. There was no rituals, no nothing. It's very specific that he said, hey, I need to do this on this day. Night is coming. Now's the time. I was sent from God to do this. I have to do the work of God. Okay? So, I hope that story made sense to you. We're going to continue now with the healing at Bethesda, John chapter 5. Okay, so the oral law, so carrying on the Sabbath. We already went through this. You cannot carry from domain to domain, from private to public. It doesn't matter. You are bound by this 4 cubit, this 2 meters squared period. And don't worry if you're a dwarf. You don't have to do dwarf cubits. They've got it all planned out for you. Very nice Jews. So let's get into John 5. So John 5 begins with this. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. Now that's important that it's mentioned as a feast of the Jews. It doesn't say what feast. And at this point, there are a lot of man-made Jewish feasts that actually aren't in the book of Moses. You're going to find that in the book of Daniel, when it says that they will, the little horn, right, the Antichrist, which isn't real, that's not a real term. That's not what Daniel's talking about, okay? There's no Antichrist. The little horn, the Jews, the one who will persecute the saints are people who will change the laws of Moses and add festivals to the calendar, add feasts and stuff, add things. And that's the Pharisees. That's the Jews of the first, the first century that came in after the Babylonian captivity during the time of the Maccabees, the Pharisees. And so we don't know what feast this is, but it doesn't sound like it's a feast of the Jews. It sounds like it's one of the man-made Jewish feasts, like Purim. Purim is a feast that we're not commanded to do. It's so there's quite a lot, a big list that we can actually do of things that Jews do that aren't in the Old Testament. And that's the whole point, is to separate what does Moses say, the prophets say, versus what do the Jews say. Okay, there's a difference between Judaism and the Old Testament. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to teach, okay? So there's a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, okay, which is called in Hebrew tongues Bethesda, having 5 porches, okay? So this place, now the 5 porches is very interesting because they actually did, now at the top here, there's two pictures here. And at the top here, they actually found the porch, which was actually near the market, near exactly where they would have sold sheep. This is found, it's archaeologically proven, this place existed, and the 5 porches, I don't think this is a good depiction of it though, but there were pretty much 2 pools, and then there were 5 porches. There was a square, 4, and then there was a 5th porch that divided the 2 pools. So they did find this pool. This does match the description in John. And so here we go. And in these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, and waiting for them waiting for the moving of the water. Now, someone asked me a question about specifically, what's his name? Jetter. Oh, shoot. There's a really smart guy that watches my videos. A guy, he asks really good questions, and he's very knowledgeable in the scripture. Actually, I need to answer this guy. I haven't answered you yet. You brought up a point about genealogies in another video, and you were right and I was wrong. And I haven't messaged you yet. I have to go through everything. But the guy who asked me this question asked about this particular verse, John 5 verse 4. This, guys, the reason I highlighted this, for an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. So he asked if this is like true or folklore, or what's John talking about here. This verse is not in the oldest manuscripts. That's why I highlighted it. This verse was added. I think it first appears in, I think it's not in Vaticanus. It's in, I forgot which manuscript. It's in one of the later 4th, 5th century manuscripts. It doesn't appear in the early manuscripts. This is an added verse, okay? And it causes a lot of problems. So we don't know why it was added. We don't know if there was maybe a footnote off to the side or what the reason was, or why it appears in later manuscripts. It's not even in all Vulgates or anything like that. And it kind of adds this mythological, folklore-y story about some angel that whoever was the first one in. It's probably, it very well could just be folklore that was added in later. Like, obviously, I don't believe it. It's not in the oldest manuscripts. This is a completely added verse. And it just adds some kind of, whoever's the first one in, well, that person got healed. Like, for me, it's kind of nonsensical. It's nonsense. I don't believe in it. We don't know why it was added. It very well could just be talking about some folklore, something that they just believed. Oh, first one in, gets this. But it's not in the original manuscript, so I wouldn't take it seriously. I wouldn't. They like to add this stuff whenever they can, and again, I don't like that word angel. It should be messenger. So, anyways, I wouldn't even, in my version of the Bible, I wouldn't even have that verse there. I would have it removed because it's not in the originals. Okay, and so anyways. So now we're learning about there was a certain man who was sick, who was lame, couldn't walk. An impotent man answered him. So Jesus saw a man lying there. So he's 38 years old and knew that he had been now, so he'd been, crippled for a long time. And Jesus pretty much asks him, hey, do you want me to make you whole? Do you want me to heal you? And the man replied that he can't get down to the waters. And so Jesus heals the guy. But after he heals the guy, what did we learn about carrying objects on the Sabbath? This is the whole point of what I'm trying to get to. Jesus tells the guy, rise up, take your bed, and walk. Did Jesus say, make sure you can only walk within a 2-meter square? No, take up your bed, your mat, and walk. What's he doing, guys? We just went through it. He's breaking the law. He's breaking the oral law, not Moses. Nowhere in Moses does it say you can't walk with your mat. Okay? And so Jesus again is trolling the Jews. He's trolling the Pharisees. He's gaslighting these guys. He's purposely doing this to anger them. Not only is he breaking the law by healing the guy in the Sabbath, which Moses never wrote about, he's telling the guy to carry something from domain to domain, going past the 4-cubit square. All right? So immediately imagine that you've been crippled your whole life, and now all of a sudden you've been made whole. This guy who healed you tells you, hey, you're going to break the law now. You're going to violate the rabbis. Go. And so he took up his bed and walked, and again, and on the same day was the Sabbath. It's very important. The Jews therefore said unto him, that was cured, It is the Sabbath day. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed. He answered and said, He that made me whole, the same said unto me, Take up your bed and walk. Then asked him, What man is that which said unto you, Take up your bed? Okay, and so pretty much, hang on here. So then the man departed. Okay, so when they find out it's Jesus, obviously, what is the Jews' natural reaction? It's time to persecute Jesus, go after this guy. They sought to slay him because he had done this thing on the Sabbath. What did I tell you? This can carry the death penalty. That is, think of the power these Jews had. Now again, according to Josephus, Jerusalem, the Jews were the richest people in the world at this time. Jerusalem was the most fortified city in the Roman Empire during this time. It was the most fortified city, the richest city, the most beautiful city. Almost all the world trade from east to west went through Jerusalem. It connects Africa, Asia, and Europe together by land. It connects the Mediterranean, the Red Sea going into the Indian Ocean. It is prime real estate. So now the people who are running the most powerful city in the world, which is what Jerusalem was at that time. Rome was nothing compared to Jerusalem. And you've got these psychopaths running the most powerful city in the world, where if you walk on this day with a mat more than 4 cubits, you can die. You can die, put to death. Okay, and nowhere in Moses does it say this. All right, so he had done these things on the Sabbath, so now that they're going to kill him, and the Jews sought the more to kill him because he had not only broken the Sabbath, but he also said that God was his father. So Jesus also said, I'm the Son of God, and the work that my Father does, I must do also. But guys, he never broke the Sabbath. Okay? The Jews want to kill him because he broke their Sabbath. He never broke the Sabbath. That's what's important in this story. There is no law in Moses that says you can't pick up your mat and walk with it. No law. Go show me that law. It's not in the Old Testament. Okay? So I hope that makes sense to you guys. Sorry, I'm just kind of rushing through this because I really want to get this video up before Christmas. And yeah, so anyways. So John 5, what law was actually broken? Okay, so the act. Jesus heals a paralytic, a guy who can't walk on the Sabbath. Jesus commands, rise up, take up your bed, and walk. The man carries his mat in public. Okay, so now the accusation. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed. No Torah verse is cited. Notice that, guys, that the Jews actually don't quote what law he broke. They didn't go, well, you broke Deuteronomy this. It's not there. No, Leviticus. No, not there. They have nothing to quote. All they can say is you broke the law. Well, where? In our oral tradition, the one we invented. We have our oral laws. Again, the Talmud's not even written. They can't even quote a Talmudic verse. What law did I break? Imagine that. Imagine, guys, you have scrolls of your religion, your Bible. It's in the temple. Okay? It's the Levites in your local town will have a copy. And you can't read or write. And now you did something and you got this mafia that's taxing you. And they said, you just broke the law, we can kill you. What law did I break? They can't even cite. There's no citation. It's the law they've preserved orally that they claim came from Moses 1,500 years ago. Imagine you live in that world. You don't even have the Talmud yet where it's written down. It's just orally. It's our oral law. We invented it. Imagine that. Imagine that's the world you're living in. That's Judaism, guys. That's not Moses. Show me where Moses said that's the law, the oral law, that you're going to have these psychopaths running around quoting whatever they invented. Guys, this is a sick religion. All right. So rabbinic law being enforced. That's what's happening here. Okay, hotzah, carrying an object between domains, public versus private domain system, the 4-cubit carrying limit, um, liability regardless of purpose or mercy. Again, it's not about, wow, this guy healed a guy. This guy who was paralyzed his whole life, his legs didn't work. Now he can walk. It's like, phew. No, we're going to kill you for that. Kill you. Okay? This entire system comes from oral law. Okay, it's the Mishnah and Talmud. Again, Mishnah and Talmud aren't written yet. That's actually what makes the gospel so amazing. Is it's showing you real first century culture of Judaism. And the Jews wouldn't write this stuff down until 200 years later. And yet it's already in the New Testament. Because this is it's accurately recording first century Jewish culture. But it's all invented, guys. Paul's invented. It's all imaginary. The Jews created all this to take over the world and enslave the Europeans and take over the pagan world, right? So the Torah never forbids carrying objects on the Sabbath, okay? So beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Okay, so let's continue. Jesus, okay, versus the traditions of the elders. What Moses commands. Sabbath equals rest from exploitative labor. There's a difference between me, again, I already explained it, there's a difference between me going out into the field, picking a whole bunch of vegetables, bringing it inside for me and my family to eat, versus me going out, working all morning, taking the vegetables, and going to the market to now sell them and make money. There's a difference. And that's what's prohibited. What's prohibited is this is where weekends come from. If you guys like weekends, show me another empire that actually had weekends, where the law is no one works. If you were a slave in any country in the ancient world, you want to be a slave in Israel. And slavery was normal. It's still normal. We're all still slaves. Are you kidding me? If you were free, do you know what happens if you don't pay your taxes? You go to jail. Okay, they will hunt you down. They will take everything you own and throw you in jail if you don't pay the IRS, if you don't pay Revenue Canada. Don't think you're free today and that there's much of a difference between you and a slave from the Old Testament, okay? Most people get what they need to survive. You're going to get enough money to pay your apartment, to pay your rent, to pay your bills, to buy food, and that's it. You're going to live paycheck to paycheck. There's really no difference between a slave in the Bible and what you're doing today. But in the Bible, in Israel, there were days off. You had a day off. Okay, that's what the Sabbath is for. No one works for business. You're still allowed to go and build a tree fort with your kids, go swimming, cook, clean, whatever, like for your house. You just can't engage in commerce and business for it, okay? That's it. So, let's keep going. Okay, so life and mercy are central, okay? Dedicating a day for God and your family. That's all the Sabbath is for. Okay, so priests will carry objects on the Sabbath. You're going to see priests doing stuff on the Sabbath. Okay, they're going to circumcise kids on the Sabbath. That's not outlawed. Okay, so you see there's stuff happening on the Sabbath. It's not what the rabbis have invented. Okay, so what the rabbis add, domain geometry. Oh my God, it's so insane. So again, like you're stuck in this 4-cubit zone, 2 by 2 meters, but again you can go over it a little bit because if you go on the diagonal it's slightly longer than if you this is the kind of stuff the rabbis are codifying and arguing about. 4-cubit movement limits, technical guilt without moral wrongdoing, healing and obedience criminalized. What the Jews do in John 5, they ignore the miracle. They enforced technical halakha, that's rabbinical law. That's what they're gonna enforce. They're gonna assume that their tradition equals law. They're gonna enforce their man-made tradition as if it's Moses, as if it's the laws, and then they're gonna persecute Jesus for it. Okay, Jesus' response, he appeals to God's authority, not rabbinical precedent. My Father works and I work. That's what Jesus says. The core message here is tradition is placed above Moses. That's what the Jews are guilty of. Their man-made traditions supersede the law, supersede God. We do not care. Okay? Mercy is subordinate to legalism. So, again, it's irrelevant that Christ is performing miracles. That's not what's important. He's helping people. He's fixing people, saving people's lives. That is against the law because it's about who's dictating the law. Okay, authority clash. It's God's law versus rabbinic law. John 5 is not about breaking the Sabbath. It's about who has the authority to define it. It's a power struggle. And Jesus is pointing out these guys are guilty of breaking the law. These Jews should be put to death. They're the ones who broke Moses. They're the ones who should be stoned to death. And here they are killing people, enslaving people with the law that they're guilty of breaking. They're the ones adding and taking away. Okay? For had you believed in Moses, you would have believed in me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? The thing is, these guys actually know Christ is right. They know the Torah doesn't say anything they're enforcing. Okay? So, that's what is going on in this story. I hope I answered the question about John 5 verse 4. Okay? And in some of the last videos we talked about God versus the rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer. A great story for you guys to study. I've already talked about it in previous videos. I think I've gone over it twice. But if you don't know the story of Rabbi Eliezer, in this story you actually have a rabbi who is fighting with the other rabbis, and this rabbi has truth on his side, he has God on his side, he has the law on his side, not Moses' law. And the other rabbis don't agree. And in the end, the rabbis confess in this story that the rabbis are gods on earth, that we do not care what God says, we do not care what the Torah says. We only care what we think is right. We are the rabbis in this story in the Talmud. The rabbis legit say, we are gods. We don't care what God says. We decide above God on earth. We are in charge. Okay? That is Judaism. It's not Moses. It's not the Old Testament. So that's my point. My point is in our story, okay, is John 5 and John 9, these traditions are replacing Moses. Okay? What Moses commands. Okay, the Sabbath forbids exploitative labor, not mercy. There's no prohibition on carrying household objects, mixing earth and liquid, or healing the sick. Not prohibited. Life, restoration, and covenant obedience fulfill the law. The core charge Jesus makes. You make the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. God's law is added to the restricted. Mercy is criminalized. Tradition is treated as divine authority. The man violates rabbinic carrying law. Moses never forbids carrying a mat. The Jews cite not lawful, not scripture. That's key. They're not saying, they never once quoted any scripture whenever they're making accusations against Christ. Do you notice how there is never a citation? They have no Torah, no Mosaic law to throw at Christ and say, didn't Moses say that? No, they never cite it. All they say, that is not legal, not lawful. Why? Because we said so. Okay? The healing is ignored, tradition is enforced. Okay? So that, I think we're just going to end there. That's the point. That's what the point I'm trying to make is the entire New Testament is Christ fighting Judaism. It's Christ not fighting Moses. Every time you're reading, he broke the Sabbath. he's not breaking the Sabbath. They're the ones breaking the law by accusing him of breaking the Sabbath, because they're enforcing man-made traditions that we call Judaism. So you cannot properly understand the New Testament if you don't know first century Jewish culture, and if you don't know what we call today Talmudic Judaism, rabbinical Judaism, or Pharisaic Judaism. They're all the same thing. This is what Ben Shapiro believes in. The Ben Shapiros, all the rabbis you see wearing the yarmulkes and stuff. This is Judaism. It has nothing to do with Moses and what Jesus taught. Jesus fulfilled the law. He never broke the law a single time. Okay? If he broke the law once, he's guilty. He's not the Messiah. So when Jesus is peeling the grains off him and his disciples are in the field picking grain, it's very important that they were eating the grains. They're being accused of breaking the Sabbath. There is no law that says you can't go out into the field, pick grains, and eat them. If they picked the grains and went to the market with them and sold them, they'd be breaking the law. But they were sitting in the field eating, and that's the important part of that story, is they were eating the grains, which you're allowed to do. Okay? So that's it. I hope you guys now understand. Jesus heals the blind man. What was really going on? Why did Jesus do that crazy thing? It was to prove a point. Okay? Also with Jesus and the mat, pick up your mat and go. Why the Jews went crazy, what was really happening in the story is Christ was purposely getting these guys to break the oral law, the Talmud, to fight against Judaism. Okay? So don't let people call Jesus a rabbi. Don't say, they want to say Jesus was a Jew, that's fine. Please define what you mean by that. Because no religious Jew today would ever call Jesus a Jew. The Pharisees, he is not a Jew to the Jews. Do you understand? You see the problem here? Is you guys want to call Rabbi Yeshua a Jew, but define it for me first. Because no Jew today, no rabbi today, no one, not even back then would they call him a rabbi, nor would they call him a Jew, because he broke every single one of their laws, fought their religion to the end, to the point where he got killed, exposing their anti-Torah, anti-Moses religion. Do you understand? To the point where he's now attacking their bankers, their priests, everyone, because no one is keeping the law. He came and fulfilled the law. Okay? He never broke the law. They were the ones breaking the law the entire time in every one of those stories by adding and taking away from what Moses said. Every one of those Pharisees should have been stoned to death. Okay? Not Christ. Instead, Christ is the one put to death when he was the one who actually kept the Torah, actually kept the law. All right? So our next video, I think we're going to do Deuteronomy 28. This is probably the scariest video I'm ever going to make. The fall and collapse of society, the curses of Moses. We're going to go step by step, and we're going to go through this. So anyways, I think we're stopping there. And anyways, guys, I'm sorry I kind of had to rush through this video. I hope it's okay. Yeah, I hope you guys learned something. And if I don't think I'm going to upload tomorrow. So it's Christmas today, so I want to wish everybody a Merry and Happy Christmas. And yep, so guys, thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys are well.